Hi everyone, Sumit Halvadia here, CTO of Rimo3, and I'm joined by Jeff Ulatowski, who's the Principal PM for App Volumes over at VMware. So thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Just to kind of kick things off, I'm showing you guys a bit of a VMware strategy on how we've provided choice to our customers and elevate the desktop solutions above the hardware. And in doing this, we realized with our apps on demand technology, we're actually able to lift the apps off the desktop and take it even a step further. And so this allows you to open that door to potentially even commoditizing the desktop and really just using generic gold images and generic operating systems and being able to focus on apps, which is the real thing that the end user is using on a day-to-day basis.
You know, Jeff, it's super refreshing hearing that, right? And being an app nerd myself for 20 years, everyone's heard my story from the Install Shield days and App DNA days. But the reality is, when you look at VDI and workspace delivery vendors, they've never really had that mindset over the last 20 years. It's always been about the infrastructure. It's always been about the workspace delivery. What you and VMware have kind of done to kind of turn its ear, turn the workspace delivery on its ear and really start focusing on the applications is just kind of a testament to some of the forward thinking that you guys are doing, not to mention the fact that it is a critical problem that needs some type of resolution, even if it's not a silver bullet.
Exactly, and one of the things that we've been focusing on in addition to that is a lot of times we just focused on the desktop and we said, oh, just do apps the way you normally have done them. So as you know, this has been a challenge for decades, working with apps and trying to figure out how to help apps work better in the organization. But what we've done is we've realized that we were able to take some technology that in itself is part evolution and now part revolution because of what we've been doing around focusing on the app problem specifically. So if you notice here, we've got the delivery piece here is the only icon here really has to do with the desktop. The rest of the stuff is all the activities that the app that the admins and the users are doing around apps. In fact, in studying this a little bit further, we realized that there are a lot of different roles. It's not just the desktop admins. It's the desktop admins have sometimes and often and in a lot of cases need to be the center of all of this because of the operating system. But what we've realized is there are a lot of tertiary players in here, and they shouldn't be, like end users, for example. They need to be front and forward. And so being able to focus on these different activities with the actual personas in mind of the users, we're able to create much more rich solutions.
I mean, that's a lot of personas you've got there. You've got 7 different personas that are actively involved. And I mean, that alone is kind of a full-time job if you don't add some layer of intelligence or some layer of automation to it, right?
Yeah, and then you have like security updates that need to
Right.
happen or vendors that are no longer supporting software and they're pushing changes back through the app admins to the desktop admins. And so if we can provide those tools to help the admins themselves or even the app admins or even the end users package their own apps, there's possibilities there. And if we can provide automation and tools around being able to package these applications and get that 99% app compatibility, that's our goal. We want to make sure that we make it easy, simple, and in a lot of cases automated because that's what folks are doing these days in IT. Yeah, so let's focus on these three activities: discovery, packaging, and testing. And from that, I'd like you to show off a little bit about what you're thinking there as far as app packaging goes.
No, for sure. I think it makes perfect sense. And if you kind of look at this whiteboard that we're going to be building out, you know, the concept of the elevated application that sits above the desktop and sits above the workspace is absolutely brilliant, right? We've been trying to solve this for ages. But the reality is no one's starting with a pristine environment anymore, right? You end up in a situation where you have a lot of legacy debt and you have technical packages that have been sitting there for 20 years. And the majority of these applications are locally installed. They sit inside of config manager, or if you're really old school, you know, they'll be sitting inside of some horrifying SMS or something like that. But the reality is you have a repository of applications and legacy debt sitting in config manager today. And that's where most people need to get started. And this is, to be fair, Jeff, when you and I have done this maybe 10 times before, every time we talk about config manager, people are like, I just don't want to touch it. I don't know what's in it, right? Like the debt, the 20 years of tribal knowledge, I just don't know how to address it. So working jointly together, Our goal is to be able to take all of that, every artifact out of Config Manager, and really understand with the installation instructions, with all of the dependency mapping and conditional logic that comes with it, let's understand what those applications are intending to do. And that's where we're able to do an automated discovery and help all of the administrators through automation understand what each of these artifacts inside a config manager is. Because Jeff, we talked about this, but just because you have an old box sitting inside of your old house when you're going to move it to a new house, you don't want to bring everything along. Just bring over what's relevant. So a big part of our discovery is focused on helping you flush out exactly what needs to come on your journey to modern versus what can stay behind and is not necessarily applicable.
Yeah, no, and a lot of times that, as you mentioned, SCCM and moving these things over, a lot of times it's a continuous process, right? We get them
Right.
deployed and then there's a new version. A vendor comes out with a new version. And so being able to automate this and being able to do this in an automated fashion is something that I think adds a lot of value to our IT's admins' lives.
Once you've kind of gone through that discovery and really understood exactly what that application portfolio and artifacts are consisting of, it's then that we start that modernization journey, Jeff, right? That's where we get to the point to understand, A, can this even work in a modern workspace? And B, can it work in a modern app format? And that's really where we start adding some of the additional value, because our goal is just to help you even get started. So from our perspective, being able to take that legacy debt and give you a data point to say that I can move this many into a modern workspace, or I can move this many into a modern format, is really kind of that data-driven approach that we want to give customers our confidence in to say, I can do this, because 20,000 apps seems like a lot of apps, right? But when you take a step back and leverage some automation in that process, it can be less daunting when you have the data to back it up.
Absolutely. And if you look at this traditional model here that we have, this is right now where a lot of our customers are. They have machines built, farms built, different images with a bunch of different apps in based on use cases, or even individual users that have machines that are all built with this model, and all of their stuff is kind of sitting in the OS. And you were talking earlier about moving boxes. Well, first off, if we had them in some sort of boxes, if we had them in some sort of package or captured form, we could bring them from machine to machine, and environment to environment as needed. Not only for a migration, but also in real time, so we can
Right.
make sure that we're able to do it on a day-to-day basis for the users and make changes in a blink of an eye. So what I wanted to show you a little bit was like the technology itself and how it works. I want to take you through, if you were to do this manually, what the process is to capture an app into an app package. So if you look in here on our console, you can see that I'm able to actually create an application. Now, one might already be created. I'm creating one to show you here and assigning an owner to it. So that's the person in the business that owns this application. But I want to create an individual package for a particular version. And at this point, I can assign to James. James could be an end user even at this point. It doesn't necessarily even have to be an admin. But the idea is I'm going to set up a machine on the edge that I think is where I would like him to be able to package. And then if I go to that actual package that I just created, you can see it's ready for capture.
Sorry, you're just saying at this point, you don't need packaging expertise to be able to go through this process, and end user could do it?
Right, and that's what gives us that level of app compat, or vice versa. That level of app compat makes it very easy. So here right now, I'm running an MSI, and in this MSI, you can see this could be one that I downloaded off the web. It doesn't even need to be an MSI. It could be you copying files to the C drive of your machine and editing a couple registry keys. It's however this would normally be deployed in whatever way you use. And what we're able to do is capture those changes in its installed form and deliver it as installed within seconds. And so we'll show you that later. But what's important for you to see here is that I just packaged Firefox. I finalized it. I've got all the bits in the disk. We do one additional reboot, which is how we get that high app compat, because
Yeah.
there are some applications that do some things afterwards, run once keys and things like that. But the
Mhm.
the idea is we just want to make sure that every app gets done in the best way possible. And so this additional reboot gets you, as you can see, packaging successful. And now that particular package is ready to go. So if I come back over to the console, I can pop open on that package. It says it's ready. And you can see here's the VHD. that we created by the end user for the IT administrators to deliver to thousands, hundreds of thousands of users.
That's fantastic. And it's applicable. I mean, you could reuse that package over and over for multiple user session based deliveries, right?
Absolutely. And so maybe this is a good time for you to show us when, we obviously there's, especially for customers that have lots of packages out there, whether they're migrating or managing lots of packages on a day-to-day basis, having some sort of automation to help them and some sort of testing to feel confident about what's happening with their packages is very much we see as desired by almost all of our customers.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And I think that if we actually go into a quick demo of Rimo3, we'd be able to take a look. So when we started talking about some of the pieces like onboarding, it's as easy as clicking and hooking into your endpoint manager SCCM environment. You just need read-only analyst permissions to be able to go ahead and start importing all of those artifacts from config manager and going through that automated onboarding process. And just so you have a little bit of visibility into that level of automation, once we've gone ahead and onboarded that particular package and imported config manager, we don't assume anything about it. In fact, this one's called Acrobat Reader Test, right? So, okay, that's what the package was named inside a config manager. During our discovery process, we take the installation instruction sets and we actually go through and install that package with all the switches associated with it, with all the dependencies that are kind of laid down, and then understand exactly what that application is looking to do. So we understand the construct of that application. And what that means is that once I've gone through that discovery, I now have the ability to come back into this particular package and say, okay, this was called Adobe Acrobat Reader, but I come in here and I see that actually this is all the different components, 39 different components that were laid down, including an updating service, right? Including any dependencies that are laid down. But really quickly, what I'm able to figure out is that this is not Adobe Acrobat Reader. This is full-blown Acrobat, right? So at this point, I have the ability to start making changes and understanding that this is not Acrobat Reader, but instead it's full-on Acrobat, and I have the ability to make the save the changes, and now I have a true representation of what that application is because the discovery and the automation brought all that information to light.
Excellent.
Now, and what's great is as part of this, right, when we start thinking about, I understand that this is now Acrobat and I understand that we're now going through a migration process. If I come in and I want to understand just how feasible it is to move this application from the current format to maybe Windows 11, we have the ability to come into the migration suitability standpoint here. And what I'm able to say is, all right, I'm deciding that I'm going to move this particular application from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And sure enough, I can come in, pick any application, and I can quickly see that an application is now been tested and ready for deployment on a brand new format. And again, this is fully automated where we create the brand new image that we're going to be deploying it to with all the prerequisites installed. And then we actually smoke test the application. This is, Jeff, what you were talking about. So prior to us even doing an app volumes conversion, what we want to understand is this particular application even going to function on a new modern workspace? All the different executables associated with it, we launch them, we understand what that parent process looks like, and try to launch as many children processes as possible over the course of a minute to tell you whether or not that application can be moved to a modern workspace. And this is a fundamentally key thing because one of the first things that we figure out is that, to your point about moving boxes, right? Some of these boxes just aren't going to shift off of Windows 7. They're not going to move to, Windows 10 or Windows 11, and that's okay. We have to have a contingent solution for those. But for the majority that we can move, what's great is being able to come in here with a sense of confidence and say a big chunk of my application portfolio will actually migrate to a modern workspace, whether it's AVD, whether it's Windows 11, whether it's traditional VDI. But what's great at this point is now I can say, I want to take it one step further. Let me click in and modernize my applications. And Jeff, this goes back to your point where if you have thousands of artifacts sitting inside of your SCCM environment. It's as simple as clicking any packages that you want to move over, right? And these have already been created. So it's tough to be able to pick them all, but like if you can overwrite your existing packages as well. So if I just take a step back here, I could say overwrite existing packages, come in here, pick all my packages, click submit, and now all of these are going to go through that same setup capture process that you just outlined manually, Jeff. It's going to do it for each and every one of these applications, leveraging VMware's technology, app capture technology, except we're orchestrating and automating that whole process on well-known tested applications so that at the end of it, you have deployment ready app volumes packages.
And the great part is you are actually using our technology to package them so they can be, folks can be rest assured that they get that commitment from us at VMware for maintaining that app compatibility and giving them the comfort that they need, that they're going to have a successful app packaging experience.
And at this point, what you're starting to see is that the process is, again, completely automated, and it's on its way, right? At this point, it requires no additional user intervention. All it takes is compute.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Sumit. That was an excellent demo. I always love to see it and always see something new in the UI as you guys continue to add additional functionality to your products. It's always really exciting to see you guys go. What I wanted to take folks through now is that you've got all these packages, right? We've got them. We took them out of this messy SCCM, with all these like rules and things like that to figure out how to install and uninstall. Well, uninstall is a thing of the past. And I remember when I would get stuck with an application on my machine that I didn't want to actually have uninstalled ever. Like, because if uninstall failed, then they're going to tell me now I need to re-image my machine, or they're going to have to come over and fix it. And now I'm special out of everybody else that's got a working system. Now I got to have some special help for mine. And that's the whole point. And then IT also doesn't like that, because IT's got to help all those individuals, right? So if we can make an environment uniform and give them an experience where they're able to click on an app, get straight to the app. In fact, they could even bring their own Dell laptop in this case. It's not a pitch for Dell. I just happen to know what the model is here. But this is, as you can see here, I've got Visio that just launched, and I'm launching now Chrome. It looks like these apps are on the machine itself. But what we're doing was we're actually using remote apps, Horizon remote apps in this particular case, to stream those apps down to the machine. So they're able to have that secure environment on the servers. IT knows that their environment is secure, yet the end user is getting an experience that they're familiar with where these apps are launching. And it really doesn't matter what endpoint they're using. We can bring in an Apple. We have a Mac here, and they're launching them. Now you can tell that those are Windows apps. They got the square corners, and we got the round corners on the Mac. But if you look up to the top, if I'm able to launch Adobe Acrobat, you'll see up in the top, you've got the Apple bar, and it'll actually show that it's Acrobat. Now, if these were on two different silos or two different delivery groups or two different farms, then if I did help about, it would open up some Edge browser because it wouldn't go to my Firefox. But because we bring the apps to the session, and I'll show you that in a second, because we bring the apps to the session, the user's experience is exactly what they'd expect. And that's what we want to avoid, is a user experience that's disconnected or different than what they would normally expect to have happen. When users get what they need and what they expect, they're happy. And that's when we're doing a great job in IT. And so the solution that we have here is to give them a very a smooth experience where all of these interactions between applications work the way that you'd expect. However, we're able to keep a very secure environment on the back end. And I'll show you how the back end works here. So as these users were clicking on applications, we're bringing the applications in VMDK or VHD format to the server. This is a multi-instance server. This could be Win11 multi-session. This could be RDSH. But the idea is that as these apps are being clicked by the users, we're bringing the apps to the machine. So the bottom user here in blue would not be able to see program files, Visio, or Chrome. They get a very isolated session that's custom tailored to the apps that they need. In fact, from day to day, the apps may be different. And if users need the same app, we're not going to deliver the app twice to the machine. The first user is just going to get it. So like the Notepad++ is our de facto app volumes example, but we're going to bring in Notepad++ here on both of the machines, and they'll both get the app installed. And it doesn't matter what their endpoint device is. It could be an iPhone or an Android. So we'll bring in an iPhone. And the advantage here is that sometimes people are on the road. all of our customers have users that are coming into the workforce that were born with with a phone in hand nowadays. It
Yeah.
seems this is expected, and so I know we have those legacy apps, those Windows apps, but if I can bring that app to the iPhone with the same experience that if I downloaded it from an app store, I'm able to click on it, get to the app instantly, and it's in the aspect ratio and form, even though that's a Windows version of a web browser that I'm running securely on my server, I'm able to use it on my Apple device just like I would another Apple application. So this is the goal. This is the idea for bringing apps everywhere.
I mean, honestly, the single app attach is just such an amazing concept for multiple users, right? I mean, you used to be able to do it with traditional VDI, but you'd have to point to the right session host, you'd have to be able to point to the right farm, you'd have to be able to point to the right place inside of a data center. But now having the same user being able to, or multiple users use 3 different versions of the application in a single entity without having to worry about that server saturation or any of the consolidation and lift, it's just fantastic. Now, I mean, we're just getting to the point where we can deliver it when they need to. I remember you and I talked about this maybe years ago where I called it the concept of informed app delivery. Get the right app to the right user on the right platform, regardless of the file format, regardless of how it's being delivered. The end user shouldn't care. And this is very close to achieving that, right?
It is, and we're there. I mean, this is released. Like you can actually get this today, and I think there's one piece there that's really important to show folks. It's like, yeah, I can build a server dynamically, right?
Right.
How do I evolve a server? Because change is constant, and it's kind of a cliche phrase, but it really is. And so I had Firefox 108 version there, but what if I wanted to do Firefox version 109? Well, I can, just to show you an example of how, let's free up some space on my drawing here. I can show you all user logging off and what happens. And the reason that's important is when I logged off, the apps that they were using are no longer in use by any users. They get removed from the machine. So I'm effectively evolving the use this machine by not having apps on it that are no longer used.
Yeah.
And in addition, I still have 108 on the machine. Why? Because 2 other users are using that on this machine. So let's go back and see what happens if I upgrade to 109 and how easy that is. Well, you saw how easy packaging was. In fact, I used Firefox to show you. It's pretty straightforward to package. I can then run through and test the application. Now, this could be the automated testing that we were talking about. They could already have marked this package tested and made it ready. That's courtesy of Rimo3. Or we can also even just go in and do some user acceptance testing on top of that, right? We could say, hey, let's test this with a couple of users, and we'll mark them testers, and we'll give them an opportunity to try the app in their production environment, which makes a lot more sense than trying to go to a separate environment, which we can do too. And so the idea is that I've tested it, I feel confident, I can publish it. Now the goal here is to be able to then move the users over, and that's where this current marker becomes a magnet, right? The whole idea is not to have version sprawl. My vendor's telling me this is the best version. Why not have all the users on there as soon as possible? So
Yeah.
by moving this current marker at that moment, I'm able to also move all the users over to this new version. Now, we're not going to change what the current users are that are currently using it. So you can see 108 is still in the server here, on the servers with the users that are using it. However, what we can do is for a new device, we can bring in a new version 109. So when they clicked on Slack and they clicked on Firefox, they got the new version 109. Now, this is where we've defied the laws of physics for Windows, because you can see 2 versions occupying the same space at the same time.
Yeah.
That works with app volumes, that works on multi-session. It does not work on the highway when you're driving down the highway. You don't want 2 objects occupying the same space at the same time. But the reason we can do that is because technically the bits are not occupying the same space. We have disks for them. But what we do from a session by session perspective is we show the user those bits on the C drive where they are, and the operating sees them in the same way. So this allows us to be able to have those applications evolve on the server so you can make updates. And guess what? Rollback is exactly the same ease. All you have to do is move that current marker back and you're able to roll it back. So this pretty much concludes the demonstrations that I had around published apps on demand. We're able to bring this technology to your Horizon environments and use Horizon and use all the Horizon clients. Of course, we can also support other areas like other technologies like Citrix, We have a solution preview for ABD, and we have some more coming on Amazon as well, which we'd love to show you guys at some point along the way. But I think with the power of what we've seen here, there's a really great opportunity to be able to tackle the whole life cycle and be able to have all of those folks that are involved in the life cycle, be it everything from discovery, packaging, and testing, which Sumit showed you a great automation about through entitlement delivery and rollback, and then obviously being able to help the users through telemetry and self-service.
And I think an important thing to mention there too, Jeff, is as we start thinking about the ongoing change management, right? New versions of the applications, you've kind of touched on that. But as you're updating that operating environment and as you're updating that workspace, understanding the impact of it, because while we'd love to have everything inside of the app volumes file format and being able to be mounted, there's still going to be a lot of disparate tech that's locally installed, that's going to be scripted actions, stuff like that for the foreseeable future. So understanding the impact of change is probably another thing that Jeff and I are quite passionate about that we can potentially do another session on. But what we've kind of tackled today at a high level is we're really close, if not right there, on solving that app problem. And the fact that we can get thousands and tens of thousands of legacy endpoints off of their traditional locally installed hellscape, for lack of a better term, and
Hundreds of
start
thousands.
yeah, hundreds of thousands, or if you ask Terry, 175 million, applications out there. But I think the reality is when you start looking at enterprises and thinking about that shift, the mindset has to be the fact that they have to do more with less. So with technologies like app volumes and apps on demand combined with Rimo3's automation and orchestration, we're trying to take a completely automated, a completely data-driven approach to solving a problem that has historically been plaguing 7 different, as you can see, user types across the life cycle. So hopefully this was a good overview for the folks that are stayed long enough to watch this. But Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time, and as always, it's always a pleasure to talk about app nerd stuff. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the time as well. Thanks for having me, Sumit.